Good morning, writers, and welcome to another episode of Tea with Tara. Today on the show, we have the fabulous Kabria Rogers. Kabria is a writer and Philadelphia native. She has a diverse career path and currently works as an arts marketer and program manager for Greater Philadelphia Cultural Alliance, an arts service organization. She has written a variety of things, both creatively and professionally. She has been published in 2 anthologies, I Am Strength and Ways of Walking. Over the past 2 years, Kabria co-founded Arts and Culture Drawn, a professional development group for arts administrators of color in the Greater Philadelphia area. She started a virtual support group, Sorry My Vagina What, a support group for women with vaginismus, and writes a companion newsletter. Kabria holds a BA in English writing from King's College and lives in Philadelphia with her wife and 2 spoiled senior citizen cats. By the way, if you want to read I Am Strength, which Kabria and I are both featured in, you can find this on Amazon. So just a few more minutes and we will be joined by Kabria Rogers and find out about her journey as a writer. Stay with us. Hi, and welcome back to Tea with Tara. We are now joined with Kabria Rogers. Hi, Kabria. How you doing?
Okay. Hi, Tara. How are you?
Good. It's been a while, right? Since we saw each other, the I Am Strength tour.
It is. I think the last time I saw you, we were in a conference room.
Oh, that's right.
At King's talking about the book.
That's right. So I have to ask you, as I ask all my guests, how did you become interested in writing? When did that writing bug bite you?
When did that happen? It happened really young. I want to say I was about 6. I learned how to read around that time. And then I realized that to read, people wrote. And that was a thing. Like I read a story and I remember thinking, oh, someone wrote this thing. I want to write things.
So did you find it cathartic at all, even when you were young?
I did. There is nothing more freeing than saying exactly what you mean, how you feel, what you see on a page. It was freeing.
It's a very emotional experience, isn't it?
It is. It's I always feel like it's similar to like church or meditation or, despite all of the things that sometimes prohibit us writers, it is very freeing once you do the thing.
And why do you think we have to write? I mean, I've asked myself that question so many times and I don't know that I always have the answer. What do you think it is in us?
It's a creative outlet. I mean, I do believe people need to express themselves. I do believe to our very core we're creative and expressive, and writing is just that. It's an outlet. It's building something. It's creating something new.
Now, you write essays. Have you ever written anything of fiction? Ever thought about writing a novel or anything like that?
Yes. So once upon a time when I was an undergraduate at King's College, because I was a writing major, I thought I would be a short story writer. I thought that would be my thing. All fiction, building characters, building plot. And then I grew up and I realized that I appreciated capturing real everyday moments. And that's kind of where I stayed. But I also like the idea of making magical worlds, all from my brain. We'll see, maybe in the future.
Are you thinking about writing maybe a nonfiction book at any point?
Yes. I actually am working on, I have a current work in progress, and it will be a nonfiction piece. It's called, can I say it's called? I'll tentatively say it's called Clinch. And it is very much around like sexual health and sexual awakening and learning more about yourself under that lens. So that will be nonfiction.
Well, I look forward to that. And how do you approach writing an essay? Because I do write essays, but I'm more of a fiction writer. So what is your writing process like?
I usually take a small thing. I usually take a small moment, and it can be an everyday moment. And then I build on that moment. So in May, I'll be part of another anthology called Ways of Walking. And it's literally an essay about walking. And when I was approached about submitting, I was just like, walking. Who does that? But I actually thought about what that means for me in the process of walking and what that feels like, and also how that connects to our external world. It connects our internal world and external world. So I usually start with this really small thing and then I build around it.
Do you have to ever do any research for your essays?
Uh, yes, because I know that every thought that I may have is not 100% mine. Someone smart also probably thought of it. And also that everything I've ever written has come from a place of curiosity. And that usually entails reading what other people have thought, if people have written about it before, if there are people who vastly disagree with my point of view. There is a good amount of following that curiosity when you write anything for me.
And do you enjoy the research process, or do you find it exhausting?
I love it. It's fun. Again, curiosity and obsession. I do sometimes struggle between the forest and the trees of sometimes you get so caught in the research that it slows down your writing. Other times you're so busy trying to get out your thought and write it out that you don't really want to hear anybody else's thoughts. So it does take a little bit of juggling to manage your inner voice, your point, right? And other people's writing voice and their point.
What about the editing process? Are you finding that you edit as you are writing, or do you write it all out and then go back to it?
Editing. You did this on purpose, Tara. I know you did. So I'll say I am not an editor. I am not a grammarian, and self-editing is very difficult for me. The only way I effectively do it is to try to keep my writing self and my editor self separate. So I'll write it and it does not make sense. And then I'll let it breathe for a day or two. And then I come back and I'm like, I am not a genius. This is very rough. And I try to make it make sense for someone beyond me.
Yeah, because they say that all writers have to be editors. And I'm thinking, you know what? I didn't sign up for that. Yeah, I do a little bit of editing, but I cannot do it because it's hard to edit your own work.
I strongly disagree. I think that there are editors and I think that there are writers. And I think that we develop enough of an editing skill to be able to make it readable.
Exactly.
And, but I don't think I would ever really sign up to be an editor.
Right. And also when you're editing your own work, your mind is thinking about what it wants, what it knows it wants to say, and it might come out another way. So you need an extra pair of eyes in there. So
Always.
Do you find that, are you critical of your own work when you go and look back at it, or are you pretty much satisfied when you write it? Because I'm crazy critical. I'm critical.
I'm hard on my work. There's no way around it. Everything I've ever written, even things that I've published, I'll go back and I'll look at it and I'll go, oh, I would have done that different today. Or why did I use that word? Or why did I use that form? Or just why? But I also usually feel really proud, even in the things that I would change, of this is where I was as a writer when I wrote this thing. And I usually can see how much I've grown and that's good too. But I'm hypercritical.
And have you ever written under a pseudonym, or would you ever?
I will. I feel like I will at some point. There are some things I really want to write that are socially terrifying when I think about actually writing them under my name. Right. And, there are times I'm just like, don't, be brave. But I do think I most definitely test out new genres and scary genres under a pseudonym before I'm like, this is me, because it's terrifying. Some of the things I want to write.
So do you think one of the reasons why writers like to write is because we all have an ego? Do you think we have an ego?
That's a trick question. And it's a trick question. I think any artist has an ego about their work. I think people have egos about things that they take pride in. Yeah. I think that that's just part of human nature. So there are writers who can be egotistical. I think we write because we don't know how to make sense of the world and how we perceive it. Like, I feel like writers have a very rich inner world,
Right.
and we're very curious people, and we're very, but we're also kind of very shy people. And it's difficult at times to connect the inner stuff and the outer stuff. And writing does that. It kind of helps you make sense of it. I mean, I remember I read a quote once from Joan Didion, and she's like, I write to see how I feel and what I think. And I feel like that's true, because sometimes you feel the feelings, but you don't really know what that means, or like what you think about a thing. And then I'll write it and I'm like, oh, that's what that was. That's what I was trying to process. And I think that that's more accurate across the board for writers.
Yeah, and I feel like our job is also to hold up a mirror to humanity, right? Because writing is also, it teaches the world, look, this is where we are, this is who we are, this is what we need to change. So I think that's also
Absolutely.
important.
Absolutely.
So do you think people can write without having empathy or sympathy? Because there are people out there who say, I have no empathy, I have no sympathy, but I want to be a writer. Can you do that?
Can you do that? Absolutely. So this is writing as a part of what we do every day versus writing as a means of creative expression. There are a lot of people, the pen has power, like to what you said about the mirror. The pen has power, and you take that power to a very light or dark space. If you are a person who wants to paternalize what it means to be human and what this human experience is, then sure, absolutely, you can be that surgical writer who only writes technically and only writes in black and white. Does that necessarily mean that you're adding something of extreme value to the world? No. But that's also why we have so many titles that don't express empathy and don't express sympathy and don't necessarily add a softer human element. Is that what we want as writers? Like, as writers like me and you? Absolutely not. We want to make the world better. We want to show the world what we're capable of. We want to show what it means to be human and be authentic. And I think that sometimes on this side of it, when we hear people say they're like, you want to make a stand, you want to make a scene. You don't necessarily want to change the world. And I think that in most cases, more empathetic writers want to change the world.
Yeah. So when you're sitting down to write an essay, who do you have in mind most? Are you writing for the world? Are you writing for the readers? Or are you writing what Kabria wants to say?
Okay. So that's good. I've recently learned that I have to write for myself first. And I think it's all those things, but I think that there are iterations to a piece of work. I think I have to write it for me. I think I have to sort it out. I think I have to sort out what I think about this thing or how I feel about this thing, and allow it to be messy and confusing and switch tenses and kind of not be for anyone else's eyes. And then when I revisit it, I go, oh, that's how I was feeling, and that matters. So how can I write this for other people who may share my view, or someone else who may not be their human experience, and give them an entry point to that. And that's where I try to edit and be kind and be open and receptive. But and then like I'll take it through other iterations of, this is for this audience. But it all starts with writing for me, because that's how I put things in the world that I'm proud of and that I stand by, even if as I grow, I may make changes.
And do you remember the first time you were ever published? Do you remember what that experience was like for you?
Oh my. I vaguely remember being published young in like a school thing. And I don't remember what the publication was. I just remember being like, oh, this is fun. I get to talk about this thing I wrote. People recognize that I'm a writer and they get it, because it's also like only 10%, I don't even say less, only 5% of writing is the actual publishing part, right? Like the other part is the hard stuff, like sitting down and doing it, making it make sense, rereading it over and over and over again. And I was always the kid with the pen and pad. And, people were like, what are you writing? But like, that's still in the me phase and you can't share it yet. And people are just kind of like, yeah, she says she's a writer, but what does that actually mean? And then you publish something, they're like, oh, that's what you do, right? So they better understand what that writing thing is. So I think I was really young and I remember thinking, I could do this. I want to write and talk about the things I write. I want to write and talk to other people who related to this story. I want to write and have people say, well, I don't really know what you meant by that and what that meant, and have a conversation. It was just kind of like, yes, I want to write and talk about that thing.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people measure success too, for writers, whether or not they've been published. But even if you're not published, I always tell people who ask me about being a writer, you have to write anyway. If you are a real writer, you're going to write come hell or high water. Doesn't matter if you're published or not, because that's what makes a writer, is that you got to keep at it.
Yes. The only true mark of a writer is that you are indeed writing, and that you're showing up in your practice. So, I'm sure a lot of people are like, I want to be a writer. And it's just like, okay, so are you writing? Do you have a creative process for your writing? Do you have a designated space for your writing? Do you go through moments where it's hard to write, but you still write anyway? I think we put a lot of glitz and glamour on it, but the truth is you just got to do that thing. And it's going to be hard some days, and it's going to be, difficult some days and emotional some days, and you do it anyway. And even if you put down the pen, there's only so long you can do that before you have to write again.
Exactly. And what writers do you look up to?
Oh my. Oh my. You're asking me at a very interesting time. So I probably would have had a different answer a few years ago, but right now I really love Roxane Gay. I've always been a fan of Didion. I've always been a fan of Baldwin. I like Zora Neale Hurston. So they're kind of the biggest. And writers are also one of the only groups of people that I actively care about who they are beyond their work. Like I tend to be interested in their creative processes and their personal lives and how they come to writing, because writing is such an individual thing. But those are the biggies right now.
And if you could go back and talk to your younger self, what would you say to that young writer?
Right.
Don't stop.
Don't stop. Don't doubt. Being edited is difficult, and that's still not an excuse not to write. Being rejected is difficult. That's still not an excuse not to write. Life is difficult and will interrupt regularly. That's still not an excuse not to write. Write, and also look for a community of writers to connect with.
What about, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So that's what I'm saying.
So what about people who say, I want to be a writer, but I don't have the time because I have a full-time job, I have the kids, I have the spouse, the dog to take out, and the laundry to do. How do you balance it all?
Again, asking me a very interesting time. Absolutely. Life is not going to make space for you to do the things that you inherently love. That is a hard lesson for us to learn, but it's true. Very few people have a blessed circumstance in which, the work that they do aligns wholeheartedly with their individual purpose and their creative, endeavors. So rare. I mean, literally like 1%. So know that life is going to interrupt, and do your best, whatever that looks like anyway. If you can only write for 10 minutes in the morning while you're drinking coffee, then write for 10 minutes in the morning. If you can only edit for 5 minutes while you're hiding from your kids in the bathroom, then edit for 5 minutes while you're hiding from your kids in the bathroom. If you can take the dog for a walk and sit on the bench and spend another 10 minutes writing, do that. If you can engage in communities, virtually or not, where you get to be like, I can't do this kids thing because I have that thing, in the bottom of a church where I just talk to other writers for 30 minutes, then do that thing. I would have made those excuses 2 years ago. And then I met other writers like, yeah, but you know that that's kind of crap, right? Like, you know, you just have to do what you can do. And the more you do it, the more you'll find those spaces to open up. And it may go from 10 minutes to a half an hour, from a half an hour to an hour. And it'll be just as important as necessary as taking care of the kids and going to work and taking out the dog. But you have to prioritize it as such.
Have you ever been so disillusioned with writing that you thought about walking away, throwing down the pen?
Absolutely. I think any writer who sits and says, you know, I've never doubted whether it's worth doing this thing is not a writer. That's a lie, you know, especially in the world of comparison reels where, you know, a new book is published every day, every hour, and you see these platforms where people are doing well and making bestseller lists and, you know, going to have interviews on TV, and you're just like, I want that writing dream. It's hard and it's scary, but it's what I'm here to do. And I think most writers would say that, like, I didn't choose to have this writing thing. It chose me. And every day that I don't show up for it just makes me feel like I'm missing the point, versus every day I do show up for it makes me feel like I'm actually living in my purpose.
Do you like to keep a journal at all? Do you like journaling?
I do. I journal. I do journal. I also keep 6 million blank journals. I don't know if that's a writer thing. I have like empty books and journals that like I just have. So when I'm done this journal, I have these 6 journals. You know, this is so pretty. Or I'm also a person who can't take to a stationery store. So I'm just like, ooh, pens. You know, ooh, whiteout. You know, bookmarks. Like I'm that person.
Yeah.
So I do journal. I don't journal daily. I also say that. So, you know, you have some writers who say to you, write every day. I say write consistently. Write as consistent as you can make it. I try to write every day, but I also set goals around that. I'll say, okay, I don't feel like writing today, so I'm either going to write for a half an hour or write 500 words, and then like that's my day. Or like I didn't write for 2 days, so I really need to just sit down and write this thing. And it may be nonsense. It may be that, you know, the sky is blue, but I wrote it. So.
And how did the people in your life support your writing? I mean, did you ever have any naysayers in your life saying, you want to be a what?
Okay, not quite that, but again, not quite getting it. So growing up, I think I felt support in the sense of my mom and my grandma were like, oh, you like to write, so you should do that. But I don't think they ever truly connected that could be a career path for me. So I think they always put it in the hobby arena of like, okay, yes, do that thing for you, but also like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Now that I'm older, I feel fortunate that I've met a lot of fellow writers, because writing can appear to be a solo sport, and it is, but it is paramount to find your people. It's paramount to find those other writers who are like, I've been working on this novel for 3 years. And I can't talk to my family about it because they don't understand why it's taking so long, right? Like, I think I have a really good support system at this point. I'm part of writing groups. I have a spouse who's super supportive. And when I like say, okay, it's writing time today, they're like, okay, well, I'll know to leave you alone between the hours of 3 and 5, and you just do that thing. So I feel fortunate that I found more writers who are also working professionals who don't get to do it full time. Who are like, I'm trying to finish this draft, and they get it. Because when I didn't have that, it was really hard to show up for the pen, because you feel like, what's the point other than me keeping a journal? And like, what am I doing? And everyone else appears to be doing it so easily. So why is it so hard for me? So now I feel very supported.
So how do you feel about writer's block? Is there writer's block? Is it frustration? Or is it just laziness? I don't feel like writing.
Um, yes, and all those things. No. I do believe that writer's block is real. I don't believe that writer's block um, can be used as an excuse for why you don't write. I think writer's block is real in the sense that sometimes you look at the blank page and you have no clue what to say or what you're trying to say. The point is, the way to stop writer's block is to write it anyway, and to know that not everything that you write is going to be beautiful and perfect and publish ready and in a draft, but you keep showing up, and then it slowly but surely turns into what you need it to turn into. Sometimes it is laziness. I don't know about you, Tara, but I feel like the writing crew can be very self-deprecating, and we beat ourselves up, and it's hard to write. And like, I don't want to. I just want to go do normal things. Other people aren't struggling with this plot point. Other people aren't struggling with how to connect these two paragraphs. And I want to be like them. I want to have ice cream and not think about how I'm going to move this story, right?
Exactly.
And then you go, yeah, that's nice, but that's not your journey. So get to writing.
Right. And being in solitude all day in an office or, alone with, well, for me, I write mainly fiction. So being alone with all those characters instead of real people, and then the characters become real, and then people really think you're crazy. But
and then your characters talk to you. I mean,
do.
like, that's another reason why I like to follow writers' lives, because you can't say that to normal people. They're like, you can't say that to non-writing people. They're like, oh, just this one character's really bugging me, and I know I'm not getting this point across, and they're upset with me. And then people look at you and like, the character is upset with you. Yes, this is a living thing in my inner world that I'm trying to actualize. They're upset with me until I actualize.
And only writers understand this. Sometimes I would go to sleep and I would dream of my characters would come to me in my sleep and tell me things that should be in the novel. And I'm like, okay, there's got to be boundaries here, but they don't care. So how do you deal with negative feedback?
I cry a bit. I wallow. No. I pout. I let myself be human. I don't like being edited. I'll say that out loud. I hate it. I pour my soul into all my drafts. At the end of my first draft, I am a certified genius, and this is the next American whatever from me, circa 2022. And then people read it and they have opinions. I'm like, how dare you? This is a stroke of genius. It deserves a Pulitzer. So I pout, and then I go, you're right, that doesn't make sense. And we're out of this stage that is solely for me. It's now in the stage that it's for a reader, it's for an editor, it's for an audience. And I want them to get it. And I don't want to do these words a disservice. So I need to put the me out of it and pull the story to the forefront.
And sometimes you feel like when people are editing, I mean, grammatical errors are, understandable because I make a lot of them myself. But when people are editing you and they just, it seems like they're not really correcting anything. They just want to say it a different way because they like the way they say it better than you. It doesn't matter. I could say it any way I want. It's the same thing. So where do you see yourself in about 5 years as a writer? What do you hope to? I mean, you want to be sitting next to Oprah discussing your latest book, or does that not matter?
I want to be talking to more people about my writing. I don't know if it necessarily needs to be Oprah. I have this thought that I know I've made it in my career when the living authors that I really look up to want to talk to me about something that I've published. But the truth is, it doesn't really matter. I never want to abandon my craft, because I have had times where I have, and they felt very lost. I don't want to just write for myself. I want to actively push myself to share more and publish more. And that's really it. I try to keep it simple. I think sometimes the accolades murky what we really want to do. Like, they're nice. Of course, we all want to be on the bestsellers list. Of course, we want Oprah to call us and be like, I have to have an interview with her. But the truth is, even those times, like when we were in that conference room, there was two people in the room. One person asking me why I decided to write it was enough. So I want to keep making moments like that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when I had a book party the first time I published my novel, and I had this fantasy because I love Dolly Parton. I thought she'll find out about my book and she'll come to the party and crash the party. But of course she didn't. And that's okay. We still have to go on, right? So tell me a little about your writing space, your office. Do you have any, because I have all kind of literary, people call them toys. I call them my muse.
To be completely honest, writing space is tough. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment in Philadelphia. I've been working remotely for the day job through the pandemic. So my office space is my living room space, but I have done some things to like elevate it and make it homey. I have a plant, which makes me feel good, living things, greenery. I have art on the wall, so I try to put up things that will remind me what I'm in it for. Things like, what if I fall? Oh, but what, my darling, what if you fly? Or bloom where you are. I have a whiteboard. I have pens. I have fancy pens like this one that, again, I couldn't resist at a stationery store, that I never use but make me feel good anyway. And piles of books everywhere. So that's a little bit about my writing space. I do miss, coffee shops and the non-socially distanced space, because as much as I do like writing at home, I like being in the world and writing in places where I can people watch and kind of be in community without necessarily having to engage. I can just write. So that's a little bit of where I'm at.
Do you like to go on literary pilgrimages? Have you ever been to any writers' homes or anything?
Not yet. I do. So Edgar Allan Poe's house is one that I want to do. I do want to do Hemingway at some point, but who's going to Florida right now? Not me. I think that's where his house is. I more want to focus on putting myself out there and applying for more writing residencies and writing retreats. I like being in close proximity to writers more than venturing into previous writers' homes or spaces. I have their books for that. I'm like, I can imagine who you are. And ironically, Hemingway is an author that I have not gone into much obsessive research about, because I don't want to know who you are as a person. I just want to stick to the words.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like the art far transcends the individual. So I try to keep that close.
Right. And so if you could offer any advice to aspiring writers, what would you want them to know? I mean, would you offer them support, or are you going to say, go home, have a drink, get over it, you don't want to be a writer?
I would talk to them, and I would really ask about their support system and their process. Like, okay, you want to be a writer. How often do you write? Do you have a space that you like to write in, or a space like inside your home or outside your home? Do you have times of the day that make you feel more creative? Do you keep a pen and pad, for when you're in the most inopportune moments, but a great story idea pops up? Like, do you have those things? Those things seem strange to a non-writer, but they're necessary for a writer. It's about making space for your craft to work for you and work with you, right? If I have an aspired writer saying to me like, oh no, I just read Hemingway once and he was amazing and I want to be like him, like, okay, that's great. Do you write it all? Do you read it all? Do, do you practice these things? Do you have a folder full of drafts that you don't ever revisit? Because I do think the best way to become a writer is to create a process around writing.
Right. And even I have a little tape recorder. So if I'm out somewhere and I got to get down that idea, and yeah, you could speak into your phone, but I I'm old school, so I have the little voice recorder.
And even those quirks matter, right? Like, are you a paper writer? Are you a computer writer? Or, are you like, I live with my iPhone, so I have like just a designated folder of those jots and those video and audio messages. Are you our old school tape recorder? I thought about a tape recorder too. I still want one because I feel like at some point I'm going to do an interview series and I want to be able to just record them so that I can ask questions and not think about it. But all those small things build into your writing process because you got to know who you are so that you can do the thing. If you're a pen and paper writer, no amount of writing on a laptop will ever help you be as creative as you could be. If you're a more modern writer, then no amount of pen and paper will work. So you have to kind of get to know how you work. And I think that would typically be my advice.
Well, Kabria, this has been such a wonderful half hour. Yeah, the 35 minutes we've done here. So this is great. I really enjoyed talking to you. And I'm so appreciative that you decided to come on the show.
I'm super excited. Thank you for inviting me. And it was great talking to you too. I'm really excited because, I do follow you on social media. So I was excited to see all the things that have been happening for you. And I look forward to more.
I look forward to all of your endeavors, your future endeavors. Are you working on anything currently, by the way?
Yes. So I am working on the nonfiction piece. And I'm also, I realized that I need like a writer site now, which I never actually thought much about. Like, oh, right. I publish things now. So that should like be in a solid place. So I'm actually thinking through a blog space more designated to like day-to-day ramblings and things that I'm working on. So that's in the works.
Okay. Well, let me know about that so I can follow you.
Okay.
All right. And thanks again and good luck.
Thank you.
So that concludes another episode of Tea with Tara, Conversations about Writing. I want to thank my very special guest, Kabria Rogers. I so enjoyed our conversation today, and I hope you did too. So until next time, writers, happy writing.